conservative, a liberal, but I love his columns, Jack Spillaine. Good morning, Jack. Thanks for coming in.
Nice to be here, Chris.
So we, you and I love the local.
I do.
Stuff.
I do. I just, I don't understand why everybody else doesn't want to read about the local stuff.
Well, it's what we bring to the table, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, any CNN, Fox, MSNBC, name them, they can bang away on the Trump stuff all day long, and they've got real good sources and unique perspective. But the local stuff is actually what affects you, really.
And the state stuff, you're not going to do a better job in the Boston paper than the Boston media.
Right. Until we get someone elected statewide from down here, which you never know.
Jeepers, who was the last one?
Governor Morton, I believe.
Governor Morton. My goodness.
From Freetown.
I mean, Biff had power when he was Senate president.
Power, please.
But he was not a statewide officer.
He might as well have been. He might as well still be, let's be honest. But no, I think Governor Morton, I could be wrong on that, but I think he was the last person elected. We have a little road for him in Freetown called Morton Road. I know. Very original. I think he was the last person who was elected governor. But we do have this for the first time in 100 years, someone on the highest court in Massachusetts,
Judge Cyphers.
And that's a big deal.
It is.
That's a real big deal. And I think that we in some respects can thank Joe Ferreira of the Governor's Council, who whispered in the governor's ear and said, "Look, I think it's time that we get someone from down our neck of the woods."
And she is still living in Freetown,
Yeah.
So.
Governor Morton, Ellie, move to Freetown if you want to go statewide.
I'm not sure she has political ambitions, but we'll have to see.
Doesn't need them now. Lifetime job. It's good if you can get it. Okay, so I don't know. I think that there could be a lieutenant governor candidate possibly on the Democrat side coming out of our area. I don't want to speculate on names. We could do that off the air. But I see something. There's some possibility, some rumors out there that someone could use transition out of the current elected position into maybe running statewide on the Democrat ticket.
Chris, you are always so connected. Like you always have some tidbit that I'm not aware of.
Yeah.
And I can imagine who those might be, but I guess I'll have to wait and see.
It's funny. Someone speculated. I asked, and it's a possibility. You never know, but it could make sense. All right. So Jack, you're back writing a couple columns a week now.
I am. I have transitioned recently from being the daily news editor to being the Sunday editor, and Sunday editor has a little more time on his hands than the daily editor, but not too much more time.
Right.
So I'm trying out a second column a week. I was a columnist for 8 years. It's one of my big loves, and so it gives me a chance to spout off twice a week. I don't think I told you this story, but I just love this story. My cousins from Cork, when I first went over,
Ireland.
They asked me what I did for a living. My cousins from Ireland, and I said, well, at the time I was a newspaper columnist. I said, I'm a newspaper columnist. She said, what do you mean columnist? And so I said, well, I write my perspective, my opinion about things, twice a week in the paper. And he turned to me and he said, they pay you for that, which was his editorial on what he thought the value of newspaper columnists was.
Right. Or maybe just his relative's opinion.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy, like you.
No, I think the same thing every time they put me behind a microphone. I go, and then I'm going to get a paycheck with this? All right. I'm glad you're back doing this more because I think it's important to chronicle what's going on here and get different perspectives on it. The 4-year mayoral term.
The 4-year mayoral term is going to be interesting.
Very.
It's interesting. Scott Lang was for it when he was running against Fred Kalis. He says when he got in office, the wisdom of being close to the people became more apparent to him. So he feels this deeply.
Very strong.
I was wondering if it might even be the thing that will push him over the edge to run for mayor because he feels it so strongly. Because there's going to be I'm not clear yet how organized the people in New Bedford Forward are, because as you were saying when I was driving the way over a few minutes ago, you said they're going to have to run a campaign. They're going to have to raise some money. Right. They're going to have to advertise. They're going to have to get the word out. We'll have to see. The last one that they had a ballot-wide referendum was the 1% tax on, what was it? It was the
the community fund. It's a
allows you to
preservation fund. Yeah,
preservation in parks. I think they couldn't have got it through if it was just preservation. But I didn't think that would go through. It did go through.
Yeah.
And without much of a campaign, but we'll see.
Well, without much opposition.
Without much opposition.
See, I suspect here, because it's a very talented, very experienced, very involved group of people that that are moving this ballot initiative forward. My sense is they didn't anticipate that Scott Lang would be against it.
No, and not only that, but they went to Scott and they asked him, would he participate? And he looked at it and he said, nah, what is this?
Right.
I suppose they assumed because he had been for it before that it was a no-brainer. It's kind of interesting because John Markey is one of the movers and shakers, and
Right.
and I think the mayor is close to this. So in Scott, they all live in the same neighborhood.
Sure.
Literally, you can throw a ball from one house to another.
Right. Or a rock, depending.
I don't think any of them would do that, but so they got a no from Scott, and not only a no, but he's gone public, very vocal about it.
I suspect that first of all, the doing the change, whether I agree with, I don't happen to agree with it. I'm open to change my mind, but I don't think it's necessary. That being said, they're doing it the right way, I think, with a ballot initiative, letting everyone vote on it.
Well, it was never going to pass the city council.
I know. But also, I think people would have resented it if it was done at the city council level by saying, hey, wait a second, you're taking away my right to vote every 2 years and making it every 4 years by telling people, hey, it's up to you. You can make the choice. And then make an argument for it. It passes or it doesn't pass, but people have been given the option on it. And I think they're going to be more successful as a ballot initiative. But as we pointed out, they had no idea that Scott was going to be against this thing, and Scott is really against it.
Yeah. What's not clear to me is whether Scott has the political muscle that he once did. Mitchell has, draws from some of the same base.
Absolutely.
And he's not a charismatic guy like Scott, but he has sort of built his own operation over these last 6 years. And,
Absolutely.
So it's not, and a lot of that extends into the business community, and it's not clear to me exactly how this will play out. I think it could go either way.
I think the most dangerous part of this is not whether it becomes goes from a 2 year to a 4 year, but there's now been some speculation by some of the supporters of it that we'll put a recall provision in there. Jack, that's bad.
Yeah,
news.
that I would not support.
Fall River. Look what happened
That's
to
Fall River, and Fall River may be on the verge of having yet another mayor. It's just been disastrous up there. The city is not being well run. A recall. I mean, some people have said to me, well, they give him the second 2 year term almost automatically.
That's right.
Anyway, but I think it's really to get things done in terms of not having to worry about the city council. That's the way I view it. Is okay. So I'm going to do something in my first 2 years, and the council's going to grumble. The council's going to throw hand grenades or whatever they do, and but by the third and fourth year, people will have forgotten, and I'll be able to low key it more. So I think it's a way of not having things slow down. There's been a number of things the council has slowed down. Mitchell has failed twice to get a person on the housing authority. It's funny. I was talking to him about this elections commission appointment,
right?
And I'm not sure he was being candid with me, but he professed not to know whether the votes were there in the council, and I already had sources that another candidate couldn't get the vote on the council. So I don't know. The council is independent.
I happen to think Manny's a good choice, Manny DeBrito, and Jack has a column today, so you can catch up on it if you go. If you pick up the paper, you can catch up what we're going to talk about here about the elections commissioner.
Or online at southcoasttoday.com.
Yeah, there you go. Now, I want to be honest with you. I'm friendly with Manny. I've known him a long time. I know his wife. I know his mother and father-in-law. His father-in-law sits on this side of the microphone. It's Phil Paleologus. I think Manny is uniquely qualified for the job. He comes from a banking background, got a business degree, management. He's trilingual, speaks Creole, speaks Spanish, speaks English, African-American. I think a community activist. You got a nonprofit with A's before J's. It's athletics. In other words, get your grades done before you go shoot baskets, right? Before jumpers. Very much involved in youth sports. Your dad, property owner. As you point out, tough to fill Maria Tomasio's shoes. She's been there 27 years.
Well, a person who's trilingual would be a good start.
Yeah.
The mayor is very impressed with him. I don't know Mr. DeBrito at all. I know Phil and Celeste, of course.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But my big gripe with this is my gripe on whenever the city fills these powerful citywide positions, city clerk, clerk of committees to a certain extent. I think that the process should be public. It was a public process, but it was little known to anybody. And I think that there should be competitive salaries. I think there should be a press release when, yes, we're announcing today a search to replace Maria Tomasia, and then you won't have to complain that we didn't get many applications, and people won't have to feel, yeah, you know what, there might have been a better person out there. You know, it might have been a public discussion we could have had as to what kind of person we want as elections commissioner. The registration of the new immigrants in New Bedford is going to be a big issue the next 20 years.
Sure, absolutely.
Mr. DeBritto's a young man. So, you know, many of those immigrants are undocumented. And we're going to see how that plays out over
Whether
the
they
next
register them to vote?
20 years. No, of course you're not going to register them
All
to
right, I
vote.
just want to make sure.
But is there going to be a process of educating the city about who can vote, who can't vote, an outreach to them, to the Latino community in general? Many people don't know that more than half of the Latino community in New Bedford is Puerto Rican or Dominican. They are not undocumented immigrants at all.
Oh, no, right. No, they're citizens.
So
citizens from Puerto Rico. Anyway.
Right, and the citizens, right. And that's I think it's one of the areas that Maria excelled in. She just had that touch of I know I've been in election offices where as an American, whether I was a student or someone who wasn't from that town, they weren't that friendly,
right?
And they didn't really help you, navigate the ropes, and that's the kind of thing that makes people who perhaps a little less tenacious than me give up,
right?
And so I think we need to have a person in that office. The mayor says Mr. DeBritto is great. I don't know him.
Yeah, I know him. He's a good guy. He's a really good guy. He's qualified. I think his parents are immigrants, so I think he's comfortable with that experience. I know his dad owned a business in the city for a long time. He recently sold it. I think it's a good choice. I think it's a kind of an easy choice, really. It's inherently political. It's the elections office. I mean, if you weren't interested in politics, you'd have no interest in applying to be in the job.
It's also interesting to have a Republican elections commissioner in an overwhelmingly Democratic city. You hope that whoever's in that position is going to be fair and equitable to either position. But this is America, and we have had over the course of centuries, some partisanship in those offices, and you don't want to have that hyper-partisanship. We had it just last year in New Bedford. I mean, I don't know whether the mayor told Maria Tomasia that he was going up to Buttonwood Park to campaign just feet from the polls with former President Clinton, but I think that whoever the mayor is sometimes can feel like they can do that, depending on who's in the election commission.
Well, the Secretary of State's office certainly warned Maria Tomasia ahead of time, as we've seen the emails. We've read the emails, and it was Bernie Sanders people that made the biggest complaints about it.
Whoever, there was a lot of. I mean, the Secretary of State ruled it was not illegal. It looked illegal to me.
It's totally illegal. Completely illegal.
I mean, I'd like to. The Secretary of State made a ruling, but gave no explanation for his ruling.
But what's interesting, I read through them. I know you read through them because the kid from Clausen from Boston Magazine who broke the story, and then Freedom of Information Act. To John Mitchell's credit, Mayor Mitchell turned over all the emails. The city of Boston refused. They said we didn't have them. They wouldn't even comply with it. And then they put them online, and so I still have the packet somewhere.
Yeah, the mayor also said this is a non-issue, and
right, but he did give the he gave the emails over, and so you could see the correspondence between the Secretary of State's office and the people in his staff. Yeah, they knew what they were doing wrong. But
so there are occasions where partisanship of the elections commissioner can come in, and
But I'll tell you, Manny's not a partisan guy whatsoever. I mean, I have never known him. To tell you the truth, I'm not even sure he is a Republican.
The mayor wasn't sure either, which I'm
being very honest with you.
Which I found astonishing. But
I don't know either.
The council agenda where he's nominated says he's replacing Celeste Paleologos, who of course is one of the Republican.
And by the way,
representatives.
If you question whether the guy's got tenacity and chutzpah, who in God's name would ever want to replace their mother-in-law in a job? Right? I mean, imagine the criticism's already there, right? Manny, what did you do? I'm joking. I love Celeste, but tough shoes to fill. Fill your mother-in-law's shoes.
I would think you would need to be able to hold your own in that family.
Without a doubt. No, I think Manny's a good call for that job. For a lot of reasons, but also look, he's been up in the banking world in Boston. I think he's at J.P. Morgan. He's been very involved in community activities down here. His family's really involved, and as you point out, the language piece is going to be very important. He speaks Spanish, you have more and more of a Spanish population here in the city. Being graduates from the local schools here, so we'll see. I think he's probably the least political person of anybody I would think who would ever go for that job.
Well, that was one of the problems, is they did not have a lot of people going for it, and because the salary hasn't been raised, I hope the council will raise the salary now. I think it's a good time to do it with the new person coming in, and although you could argue for 27 years, why didn't they respect Maria and give her more of a raise? It needs to have a higher raise than $60,000 as an entry for to attract quality people. I think
it's a lot of work for it really is a lot of work, and that's the other thing is I think that Manny, being a banking guy, you understands you got all kinds of rules and regulations you got to deal with. It's just like you do in banking, but you got private information, but you've also got to be transparent. So there's a real you got to really be smart.
One of the hardest things is the workforce you have is an all-volunteer workforce, and the civics culture where people were well educated in civics has passed in America, and a lot of the little old ladies who work the polls are literally dying out. God bless their souls.
Right.
And so, for a while, Mayor Lang was talking about bringing in college kids. That was a no-brainer. They weren't coming in to work for $2 an hour or whatever it is.
Right.
At the polls. You have a workforce that doesn't always know what they're doing. It's a tough job.
Yeah. Well, that'd be interesting because I know Mandy's very much involved in youth sports. It'd be interesting if he could take what he's done with youth sports and turn it into some sort of youth civics type of thing. Wouldn't that be great? Listen, we'll take a quick break. We'll be back. We're chatting here with Jack Spillaine from the Standard. Important phone call off the air. Manny DiBerto's a Democrat, so he's actually not a Republican. I now have to rethink everything I said about him. No, I'm kidding. I like him. I think he'd do a good job. Yeah. It's interesting. So apparently the wording's a little off there. He'll be replacing Maria, apparently, who's the Democrat.
So the wording on that city council agenda item, someone must have been mistaken.
Yeah.
That wrote it up.
Yeah. So, that's interesting. Yeah, he's. I kind of never suspected he was a Republican. I'm telling you, I helped his father-in-law. He helped too, but he wasn't out there with the rest of us Republican jihadists.
Yeah. So is Celeste resigning just so there won't be two family members?
I think she's just leaving.
She's just leaving. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what I'm thinking. I think it's like she just might be tired of it.
Yeah, sure.
But I don't know. But I really don't know. I mean, she may have something else she's doing. But all right. So that'll be interesting. I suspect he has the votes on the city council. I don't think it gets this far if he doesn't.
It's a well-known family in the city. I can't imagine.
Both his in-laws and himself, his family. Yeah, no, I think he's in good shape there. Jack, let's transition here to. I was playing Jimmy Buffett. I could have been playing the Grateful Dead. This marijuana thing going on here in the city. You wrote a column. Hugh Dunn. So let me back up here. Hugh Dunn sent a letter as the Ward 3 city councilor, which is where the medical marijuana facility is going to be located, to the state legislature, asking them to make a change, because they're working on the whole legalized marijuana ballot initiative now anyway, as is their right. He wants them to change the wording that couples recreational marijuana and medical marijuana. Under the local control, a community can ban the sale of recreational marijuana. However, if they have a medical dispensary, they cannot prevent the medical dispensary from selling recreational marijuana. So, if you're a community that says we have cancer patients, people with AIDS, people with all kinds of other diseases that are helped by marijuana and are prescribed medically, and you say we want to offer that to people who live in our community compassionately, you can't then say, but people who just want to buy weed and get high, we have to service them as well. Seems to me, and these are my words, not Hugh Dunn's, it's almost like a hostage situation where they've taken the medical people and said, you can't get medical unless you let other people get recreational, as the way the ballot initiative was written. And Hugh Dunn's asking them to change that. Doesn't mean you won't have a recreational sale in marijuana in New Bedford, just means you can regulate it, which currently, because there already is a medical facility deal, they've given up all local control.
Yeah, this is a change that's fraught with peril, even though I think there does need to be a change. I'm myself libertarian on these issues. I've long been a supporter of full legalization of drugs just because of the crime situation I feel that it's caused in the inner city. But having said that, I'm not sure that right across from the Route 140 exit on a very busy Hathaway Road is the place to have recreational marijuana. So my concern in this, after reading about, although I have had a number of people contact me since I wrote the column saying that at the public hearing, the majority of the people were for the recreational marijuana at that spot. There are some neighbors that were not. That the majority of people can be for all kinds of things. It doesn't mean it's a good thing to do. And so I hope that whatever adjustment the legislature comes up with, because it does have the right, as you pointed out, to adjust referendum. It's not like California where you just have to adopt it. Whatever adjustments they come up with are in keeping with the spirit of what the public voted. Right. This was, I think it was a 9% margin of victory, so it wasn't a close, the public wasn't closely divided. There was a significant, and for medical marijuana, it was like 20% that voted in favor of it. So I hope what the legislature comes up with will be in the spirit of that. I would think it would not be appropriate for the city size of New Bedford not to have recreational marijuana somewhere. Right. But
even possibly at that location. The problem, as I see it, is that it's removed. When you couple the two together, you say if you have medical, then you must have recreational at the same facility, or you can't prevent it. Then that has removed local control. So it may be that the city council says, all right, come before us again, we'll let you do recreational there, look at the traffic studies. I don't know, but I just know that forcing communities who want to have medical to also give up any local control over recreational at the same facility, well, it's a little too cute by half.
So that's the question arises: why did the people who sponsored the referendum write it that way? There was a lot of speculation that medical was a stalking horse for recreational. That's what this always was about. Mm-hmm. And then once you had the medical licenses, you'd have a leg up on getting the recreational marijuana. That's concerning to me. And you may know more about this than I do. Is there a cap on how many recreational outlets you can have, the way there is on medical marijuana outlets? Because the state has a set number of medical marijuana outlets. Mm-hmm. To me, it's you either have it or you don't have it. And so yes, you need to regulate it where it can be sold and stuff like that. But I'm a little uncomfortable with stringent caps on how many places can sell it. It's sort of like liquor licenses, and that brings in its own corruption. So right. I think that we ought to have multiple recreational, maybe multiple medical marijuana establishments in the city, and having just one seems to me to be like a license to print money, and that
monopoly
seems a way to get corruption.
Yeah, on the licenses, they tethered it to the liquor licenses, which is based on population. My understanding, and I'm willing to be corrected on this, I don't have any in front of me, as you can attest, Jack. I'm doing this from memory. I think there's a minimum, but maybe not a maximum. I think it's based on 20%. So I know in Lakeville, they have to have 2 based on their population and their liquor licenses. I think
there's been a recent effort to increase, though, or change the way you get liquor licenses.
Right, but just based on the ballot initiative and as it stands now. Because that's the thing. We're talking about thing that isn't even finalized yet. Now, when it comes to... I'm just talking about whether medical is a stalking horse for recreational. You start reading through this law. I admit, I read about it after I voted for it, and I really read through the law after the fact. I mean, I knew the basics of it, but I'm just reading through the thing because I'm a super nerd, and I'm reading through the different provisions of the ballot, and I come across this local control. I like that stuff, and I'm reading it. It says, that's where I discovered can't ban the recreational sale at medical.
That's not local control.
Right. So I sent a friend of mine who's an attorney and very much involved in this an email. It's one of these like 12:30 at night emails, and I said, hey, I think I discovered a loophole here. Am I reading this correctly? And so I described him. He sends me back an email, and we've been friends a long time. He says, that's not a loophole. That's the entire intention of the law. In other words, everything else around it is a law. In other words, yeah, that's the whole reason the ballot initiative was done, is so that medical could sell recreational. It's given medical a monopoly because, in theory, every community could ban recreational marijuana, in theory, but they could not ban it at the existing medical facilities, thereby giving medical a monopoly.
But you can ban the sale of liquor in an individual city or town. I mean, there are many dry towns.
Yeah, and you can ban recreational sales of marijuana in a town unless you have a medical facility. Then you have
but then you can't ban them.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying, right? So what they've done in a sense is created a monopoly potentially for all the medical facilities.
Right. So then the question is, why did they do it that way?
Well, Why does anyone want a monopoly, Jack?
Money.
Right. Yes, of course. Of course. And look, again, I'm not really opposed to recreational marijuana. I go back and forth on it. I think that the way it is now, where you can grow it at home and someone can give it to you, things like that are fine. It's probably don't need recreational sale at stores. I don't know.
What about the crime? What about all the crime that is associated with the sale of illegal drugs? You don't think there's crime?
Well, it's not illegal anymore.
Well, I see. So
what I'm saying is, I'm just talking about the nitty-gritty of how a consumer gets the product. I don't know that we have to have one here in the plaza where you go over and buy grass as opposed to just getting it.
But right now we're in a situation where you can have it, but you can't sell it.
Right.
So if you're not growing it yourself, how do you get it? And how do you get the seeds in the beginning to grow it? So it's sort of a wink and a nod, and wink and a nod's laws don't end up doing very well. And I think that we need to have some clarity. Not everybody's going to want to grow marijuana. There has to be a way to buy it. The question is it going to be a monopoly? Is it going to be, as I said earlier, a license to print money?
Right.
Or is it going to be some sort of system that has some reflection of the free market?
Well, and then the other big thing still out there is, what does the federal government do? One of the big problems is medical is basically, I think it's actually been legalized on the federal level.
Horse is out of the barn.
Well, here's the question. You got a medical facility. Doesn't matter where it is. Let's take New Bedford off the table. Medical facility. It's got a lot of cash, a lot of drugs. You're going to need to guard it. Presumably, you're going to have police detail guarding the facility. That would make the most sense. Now, if it's just a medical, and quite frankly, the federal government has signed off on medical marijuana. There's some stuff in it was put legislation that was passed. But now it's a recreational facility as well. And the federal government cracks down on recreational. And now you've got a police officer who's doing a detail there at a place that's violating federal drug laws, and he's carrying a gun, and the DEA raids it. That police officer is potentially facing 25 years in jail.
That's why it's not going to happen. If it was just Colorado, it would be one thing. There are too many recreational states now. I think including California is about to do it. Jeff Sessions may not like it, but the thought of the federal government coming down with all these leftover 60s potheads, who are going to talk about it and are going to, have rallies and everything else. It's like prohibition. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I think, but what you said is right. Having these laws that are very hazy and vague, something needs to be cleared up here.
Well, I think the
reason
they did it with medical marijuana was to get the foot in the door. I really think it was very much a stalking horse. I kind of had a sense of what they were doing. I voted for it anyway because I said, I think they were stalking horse, but I think the drug laws need to change, so I'm going to vote for it. I think a lot of other people felt the same way I did.
Jack, there was a raid like a week before the election, and it was some woman had one plant growing in her backyard, some elderly woman. It was out in Western Mass, and they didn't arrest her, but they came with a helicopter, and then and then the state police came and they pulled the plant out, and they said, we can arrest you or something like that. That was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. I can't. We gotta end this. This is
all
crazy.
Those flower children from the 60s are in their 60s and 70s.
Right. Oh no, I can't imagine that there's anybody now who at least isn't familiar with it, even if they never tried it. They knew friends who did.
I know people who haven't tried it. They just didn't want to do it, but they certainly have friends or family.
Right.
Who did.
And I think that we don't know where it's going to go in the long run, but I also think that there's a lot of arguments the argument that people are going to get off opiates because now there's legalized marijuana is a little ridiculous because that argument's often out there. I think to myself, if you're able to find illegal opiates, I think you could find illegal grass. I don't think that's really
it's also a whole different chemistry. It's a whole different reaction that people have to the drugs. I don't think one substitutes for the other. Sure.
All right. Hey, listen, we're speaking with Jack Spillaine from the New Bedford Standard Times. He's got now writing 2 columns a week, plus he's the Sunday editor, and he's covering a lot of local stuff. And so we appreciate Jack coming in. And I'm going to let you ask him a question if you'd like. Go ahead. Thanks for holding. You're live on WBSM. Hello? Oh, did I do something wrong? Good morning. Good afternoon. You're live on WBSM.
Yes. Medical marijuana. I'm pretty much fine with that, but let me ask you a question. recreational marijuana. You really believe that a guy that smokes marijuana recreationally is going to go to a place to pay $350, $400 out of a place that sells it, or do you think he's going to get it on the street, the same strain, for $200 to $2.25 an ounce?
I agree with you.
No.
I think the untaxed.
They're not going to go to that dispensary for that. So there's no money in recreational marijuana for a dispensary. Not when you can get the same strains, Gorilla Glue or San Fernando, which are the two best strains.
Which one do you recommend? Gorilla Glue. I would stay. That seems scary.
I don't smoke marijuana because it's bad for you, and you'll get arterial sclerosis if you smoke the wrong strain long enough.
Can also make you paranoid. Probably not a good thing.
No, never. Listen, I smoked for years. It never made me paranoid. Never.
So I think I recognize the caller, but let me ask this: in Colorado,
let's face it, marijuana is not a good thing for people to be smoking. Simple as that. It maybe helps some people with their ailments. So yes.
Well, the same thing with alcohol.
No, I'm not for recreational marijuana. I don't, and no one's going to make any money off of recreational marijuana at a dispensary either, because people aren't going to pay $400 an ounce, or $350 if they lower the price.
Hey, thanks so much, Mike, for giving us a call. That was regular contributor to the program here, Mike Jansen. Go ahead.
He raises an interesting question, but I think some people are just going to want to do it legally rather than do it illegally, and some people would never buy it if it was an illegal transaction because they are in professions or whatever where they couldn't afford to do it. In Colorado, the taxes I think are a lot higher than they are in the Massachusetts law currently, and yet the recreational marijuana industry has thrived, from what I hear. Why is that?
You know, Jack, I think that people pay for convenience. So, you know, in theory, I could brew my own beer or distill whiskey, or, you know, there's a lot of things I could do. I could grow my own food. Right. When I was a kid, I used to catch lobsters. You know, there's things you can do.
Oh, you might know a guy who sell you a case of bootleg liquor or liquor that is hot.
Right.
But you'd rather go down to the.
But it's just easier, you know. If I'm going to buy a 6-pack of beer, it's just easier. And so I think that recreational will thrive because of advertising, because of the legality, as you point out. People just say, "I'd rather have that," and it's legal. And then the consistency, you know, of it. And again, just the convenience. I mean, if you can go, if it's here in this plaza, and you're, which by the way, this would be a perfect plaza for it, because it's about the only thing we don't have here in this plaza. Really, you could live in this plaza.
It has everything.
It has everything. In your dog too, because they have a dog grooming spot here. But I think that I also think that the people wouldn't be doing this if they didn't think they could make money. This is not a philanthropical enterprise.
No.
It's got to work.
It's a huge amount of money that people think, and there's a significant investment up front that you have to have. So people have costed it out and figured out we can make money. But I mean, it is an interesting point. I suppose at least some people will continue to buy it on the black market because it's cheaper.
Let's take a quick break. We'll be Jack Spillaine here in the studio. Jack, thoughts on the upcoming city election?
Well, I was just talking. I don't know a whole lot of these candidates. That's good. New blood. There's 4 or 5 people who've taken up papers in Ward 5, at least a couple in Ward 1, and a couple more in Ward 2. I hear that the people in Ward 2 are neighborhood activists. Carlos Felix is one of them. I don't know most of these candidates, and so that's kind of interesting. That means new blood is coming. You get
Peter Boswell, who comes from a pretty well-known family in the city, and he's the chairman of the park board right now. He's a really. I've worked on campaigns with him. He's a force. When he gets out there, he understands politics, understands the work that it takes to get elected. The thing I always find interesting is you could be the smartest guy in the room, know all the issues, but if you don't have the tenacity to do the shoe leather.
Yeah.
Who cares? You might as well be a professor.
That might make the golf course an issue in the campaign. I know there was some concern that he did he complain that he wasn't notified?
Yeah, I think he found out from our news department on the radio.
Yeah.
And I haven't looked at the list. I'll have to look at it tomorrow as who's taking out papers. Our last caller, Mike Jansen. Mike promised me he was retired. And then he went and took out papers for city council and mayor.
Maybe this is Mike's time. You never know.
I thought last time he was going to get in. I know that he didn't do as well. I really thought he was going to get in last time. But
you might want to. This Ward 2 race could be interesting. It's an inner city ward. Sometimes there are difficulty getting candidates in the inner city wards. That could be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be 5 is going to be very interesting. 1 is going to be interesting, and then of course the big thing is, does Mitchell run again? And if not, the open seat, which then I think would propel people from the at-large council to run. So you have at-large open seats. Yeah. I think Mitchell runs again. I don't know though.
I had someone this time for the first week say to me, "Oh, I heard Mitchell was not running," and this was a person that in a pretty good position to have their ear to the ground. So I'm wondering what that was all about.
I hear the same thing, Jack. And there are sources that I have that tell me he's not running again, and I say, I know, but boy, he seems like he is.
Yeah. He
hasn't stopped doing the job by any means.
So if he doesn't run, and we don't know until the last minute, that would favor somebody Tony Cabral.
Got 80 grand in the bank.
Lang, but I don't think Lang would run against Cabral. And
I agree with you.
So I'm not trying to think who else might.
Oh, I think Linda Moore would take a look at it. I think Brian Gomes would take a look at it. There's somebody out there we don't know would take a look at it. John Markey could run. You never know. Listen, folks, join us again. Thanks, Jack, for coming in. Enjoy the Red Sox. We'll be back next Sunday here at 10 a.m. Thank you so much. Have a lovely weekend.